After a lifetime of being ignored, I thanked my parents for surviving the inconvenience of a child in my graduation speech. They got revenge by faking a plagiarism scandal, so I took their perfect reputation and shattered it. My parents have the kind of love that makes other people jealous. They still dance in the kitchen, still go on spontaneous getaways, still kiss each other like they're 17 and drunk on hormones. People always told me how lucky I was. At least your parents are still together, they'd say, like that was some kind of gift. But the thing about having parents who are obsessed with each other is that there's no room left for anyone else. They weren't abusive, they weren't cruel, they just forgot I existed unless it was convenient. I was the third wheel in my own family, and because me and my mom were born in the same month, mine was always the one that went forgotten. No matter how many awards I won, A's I got, or gold stars I achieved, none of it ever mattered. I always came second to my parents' marriage. I had to learn how to cook for myself by 11. I learned how to braid my own hair by 12. And when I got my first period in the school bathroom, the only person I told was my diary, because my mom hadn't answered any of my calls. Still, I never said anything. I figured there was no point. I had food, I had clothes, and I had two people who seemed deeply happy. What kind of monster would ruin that? But when I graduated high school, my parents actually showed up to the ceremony. And because I was valedictorian, they got front row seats. Except, when I got up there and looked into the crowd, I saw my parents whispering to each other, barely even looking at me. They were wearing matching outfits too. So I took the opportunity to acknowledge them in my speech. I want to thank my parents who've been in love with each other longer than I've been alive. I mean that. Their relationship has survived decades, 2 recessions, and apparently, the inconvenience of having a child. Everyone laughed, and even my mom gave a weak smile. When it was over, we didn't speak much because they were already late to a dinner reservation. At the time, I had no idea how upset my dad was, until the next day when I got a call. It wasn't my parents, it was my guidance counselor. Her voice was quiet, hushed. "We found out you plagiarized your college essay, Piper." My stomach twisted. I had no idea what the F she was talking about, but just when I took a breath to say something, she continued. "There is no point arguing this. The evidence is damning. I'm just sorry I ever wasted my time on you." She then proceeded to slam the phone down and hang up. My mouth went super dry. My blood turned cold. This was the college I'd been dreaming of since I was a kid. The one whose posters filled my entire room. The one I wouldn't shut up about. Gone. I had this nagging feeling that my parents had something to do with it. At first, I didn't want to believe it, because after all, they were my parents, meaning they're supposed to love me, right? Well, that same day, out of nowhere, my parents began suggesting alternative routes after high school, just in case. The alternative routes in question? Part-time dead-end jobs in the local fast food chains. That's when I knew they were somehow behind it all. So I did what any rational teenager would do in that situation. I waited until nighttime and sneaked into my parents' room to grab my dad's phone. You see, he had this app that recorded all his calls, and this way I could know who it was for sure before entering my villain arc. Piper plagiarized her essay. I know because I helped her. But this isn't right. Her place needs to go to someone who actually deserves it. The sound of my dad's voice made my blood boil. I knew exactly what this was. Punishment. For embarrassing them. For embarrassing my mom. I thought about all the times I begged my parents for attention. The letter I slid under their door when I was 5, asking why I couldn't be part of their family. The years of effort, money, and time I put into trying to look my mom, just so I could finally be lovable. I stared at the Harvard posters around my room. They may have gotten away with ruining my childhood, but there was no way I'd let them get away with ruining my future. Not without a fight. The next morning, I went straight to my guidance counselor's office. I needed to clear my name, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. My dad was a respected figure in our small town. He'd donated to the school, served on committees. His word against mine would be no contest. Mrs. Peterson barely looked at me when I walked in. Her office smelled of coffee and disappointment. "I have nothing to say to you, Elizabeth." I took a deep breath. "I didn't plagiarize anything. My dad lied to you." She finally looked up, her expression a mix of pity and disgust. "Your father has been nothing but supportive of your education. Why would he sabotage you?" "Because I embarrassed him at graduation," I said. "And my parents care more about their image than they do about me." She shook her head. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof?" I didn't. I'd listened to the recording but hadn't thought to save it. Rookie mistake. Not yet, I admitted, but I will. When I got home, my parents were sitting at the kitchen table waiting for me. They had these concerned expressions that might have seemed genuine to anyone else, but I knew better. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, highlighting the gray in my father's temples and the worry lines around my mother's mouth. Worry not for me, but for their carefully constructed facade. "Honey, we need to talk about your future," my mom said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "Why did you tell Mrs. Peterson I plagiarized my essay?" I asked, looking directly at my dad. He didn't even flinch. "Because you did. Remember when I helped you with it last fall?" The thing is, he never helped me. Not once. I wrote that essay alone in my room over 3 weekends while they were on a couple's retreat, but it was his word against mine, and we both knew who everyone would believe. "You're ruining my life," I said quietly. My mom sighed. "Don't be so dramatic, Elizabeth. There are plenty of good state schools, or community college. Not everyone needs to go to Harvard." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that recording on my dad's phone. If I could just get a copy of it somehow, I could prove he was lying, but he always kept his phone with him, and after my little nighttime adventure, he'd probably changed his password. I needed a new plan, and I needed allies, because for the first time in my life, I realized I was completely on my own against the 2 people who were supposed to love me most in the world. I decided to start with the one person who might actually believe me, my English teacher, Mr. Taylor. He was the one who had read all my essays throughout elevated school, who had watched my writing evolve over 4 years. If anyone could vouch that the Harvard essay was my authentic work, it would be him. I'd spent countless hours in his classroom after school, revising drafts and discussing literature. He knew my writing voice better than anyone. The next morning, I got to school an hour early and waited outside his classroom, my stomach in knots. The hallway was eerily quiet, just the occasional janitor passing by with squeaking wheels on their cleaning cart. When Mr. Taylor finally arrived, Coffee in hand and looking surprised to see me, I almost lost my nerve. His kind eyes crinkled with concern as he took in my disheveled appearance. "Elizabeth, everything okay?" he asked, unlocking his door. The familiar smell of old books and chalk dust wafted out as he pushed it open. I followed him inside and explained the situation as calmly as I could. How my dad had lied about helping me with my essay. How they were punishing me for my graduation speech. How my entire future was being destroyed because I dared to speak up. My voice cracked several times as I spoke, betraying the emotions I was trying so hard to control. Mr. Taylor listened without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned with each word. He set his coffee down untouched, giving me his full attention. "That's a serious accusation, Elizabeth, but I've read your work for years. That essay had your voice all over it. The metaphors, the sentence structure, it was unmistakably yours. Can you talk to Mrs. Peterson? Tell her that?" I asked, hope flickering inside me for the first time since this nightmare began. He nodded slowly, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "I can try, but without evidence." His voice trailed off, and I could see the doubt creeping in. "I know," I said. "I'm working on that part." My hands fidgeted with the strap of my backpack, a nervous habit I'd never been able to break. Later that day, I saw Mr. Taylor and Mrs. Peterson talking in the hallway between classes. Their conversation looked intense. Mrs. Peterson's arms were crossed tightly over her chest, and Mr. Taylor was leaning forward, speaking with animated hands. When they noticed me watching from my locker, they both went quiet, exchanging a glance I couldn't decipher. Not a good sign. My heart sank as Mrs. Peterson walked away without acknowledging me. I spent the next week trying to come up with a plan to get that recording. My dad had indeed changed his password. I'd watched him punch it in when he thought I wasn't looking. 6 digits now instead of 4. And he never left his phone unattended anymore, keeping it in his pocket even when he went to the bathroom. It was like he knew I was onto him. Meanwhile, my parents were acting like nothing was wrong. They still danced in the kitchen to their favorite 80s songs, twirling around the island while dinner cooked. Still called each other those nauseating pet names, Honey Bear and Sugar Plum, that made me want to gag. Still made plans for weekend getaways to their favorite bed and breakfast in Vermont. But there was a new tension whenever I entered the room. My dad would watch me carefully, his eyes following me like a predator tracking prey, like he was waiting for me to make a move. My mom would try too hard to include me in conversations, her voice unnaturally bright, as if that could make up for 18 years of neglect. I needed help, so I reached out to my only real friend, Quinn. We'd been close since middle school, bonding over our shared love of true crime podcasts and the fact that we both felt like outsiders. Her parents were divorced and constantly fighting over her, which was its own kind of haul. She understood what it was like when the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally didn't. Quinn was the only one who saw through my parents' perfect facade to the dysfunction beneath. "Holy shat, Elizabeth," Quinn said when I told her everything. We were sitting in her car in the school parking lot, windows rolled up for privacy. The air inside was stuffy and smelled faintly of the vanilla air freshener dangling from her rearview mirror. "Your dad is straight up evil, like sociopath-level manipulation. I need to get that recording," I said, picking at a loose thread on my jeans. "It's the only proof I have. Without it, it's just my word against his, and we both know who people will believe. The Golden family man versus the bitter teenager. It wasn't hard to guess who would win that contest." Quinn thought for a moment, twirling a strand of her purple-streaked hair around her finger. Her nails were bitten down to the quick, a habit she developed during her parents' messy divorce. "What about his cloud backup? Most phones automatically back up to the cloud. If you know his email password, you might be able to access the recordings that way." I hadn't thought of that. My dad used the same password for most of his accounts, or at least he used to. It was worth a shot. A tiny spark of hope ignited in my chest. That night, I waited until my parents were asleep. The house creaked and settled around me as I sat in my darkened room, watching the minutes tick by on my alarm clock. At 1:17 a.m., I finally heard my dad's soft snores through their bedroom door as I crept to the family computer in the den. The floorboard outside my parents' room squeaked, and I froze, heart hammering in my chest. But the snoring continued uninterrupted. My hands were shaking as I typed in his email address, the blue light from the screen casting eerie shadows across the room. For the password, I tried his old standby first. My mom's birthday plus the year they met. Nothing. Then I tried variations. Her birthday backward, their anniversary, even my birthday. A long sheet. Nothing worked. Each failed attempt increased my anxiety, a cold sweat breaking out across my forehead. After about 20 minutes of failed attempts, I was about to give up when I remembered something. Last Christmas, I'd overheard him telling my mom he'd updated all his passwords to be more secure. She'd laughed and said, "Not for me." They'd exchanged that nauseating look they always shared when they thought they were being clever or romantic. On a hunch, I tried a more complex version of their wedding date, the month, day, and year followed by forever, the kind of cheesy thing they would think was clever, but still somewhat secure. The email loaded. I was in. I had to clamp a hand over my mouth to stifle my gasp of surprise. I searched through his cloud storage, looking for the call recording app's backup files. There were hundreds of audio files, all labeled with dates and phone numbers. My dad recorded all his calls, a habit from his corporate days that he claimed was for liability protection. I found the one from the day after graduation, a call to my school's main office that lasted just over 4 minutes. My pulse quickened as I clicked on it. I downloaded it to a USB drive I'd brought with me, my heart racing the entire time. The progress bar seemed to move in slow motion. Every small noise from upstairs made me jump. Then I carefully logged out, cleared the browser history, and went back to my room, clutching the USB drive like it was a lifeline. I didn't dare listen to it there. I needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere my parents couldn't interrupt or overhear. The next day at school, Quinn and I huddled in the library's back corner with a pair of shared earbuds. The ancient desktop computers were rarely used by students, preferring their own laptops, which made it the perfect place for privacy. The recording started with some static, then my dad's voice came through clearly. "Hello, this is Robert Miller. Miller, Elizabeth's father. I need to speak with Mrs. Peterson urgently. His voice had that authoritative tone he used when he wanted to intimidate people into compliance. There was a pause, then, Mrs. Peterson speaking. What can I do for you, Mr. Miller? This is difficult for me, my dad said, his voice heavy with fake regret. I could picture him perfectly. The furrowed brow, the concerned parent act he'd perfected over years. But I feel I need to come clean about something. Elizabeth's college essay, the one about resilience and overcoming challenges, I helped her write it. Actually, I wrote most of it. She was struggling with the deadline and I just wanted to help. But after her behavior at graduation yesterday, I realize I've been enabling her. She needs to learn there are consequences for her actions. My hands clenched into fists as I listened, nails digging painfully into my palms. The absolute lies he was spinning so effortlessly made me suck. I'd written every word of that essay myself, staying up until 3 a.m. for weeks to perfect it. That's a serious admission, Mrs. Peterson said, sounding shocked. Her essay was a major factor in her Harvard acceptance. I know, my dad continued, his voice dripping with false sincerity. And that's why I'm calling. It's not right. Her place needs to go to someone who actually deserves it, someone who did the work themselves. Quinn's eyes were wide, her mouth hanging open slightly. Your dad is straight up gaslighting the school. This is insane. Like, criminally insane. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Hearing him systematically destroy my future with such calculated precision was worse than I'd imagined. It was one thing to suspect what he'd done, another entirely to hear the cold, methodical way he'd executed his plan. We'll need to investigate this, Mrs. Peterson said on the recording, and contact Harvard immediately. I understand, my dad replied. I just wanted to do the right thing. My wife and I are devastated, but we're trying to use this as a teaching moment for Elizabeth. The recording ended, and I sat there, trembling with rage and vindication. I had proof, actual proof that my dad had lied. The smoking GN that would expose their perfect family facade. What now? Quinn asked, her face pale under the fluorescent library lights. Now I take this to Mrs. Peterson, I said, my voice stronger than I felt, and hope she believes the recording over my dad. I ejected the USB drive and tucked it safely into my inner jacket pocket. But when I tried to see Mrs. Peterson that afternoon, her secretary, a woman who'd always seemed to dislike me for no apparent reason, said she was in meetings all day. You'll have to come back tomorrow, she said without looking up from her computer. It felt like the universe was conspiring against me, but I wasn't giving up. I'd waited too long for this chance. When I got home, my parents were waiting for me in the living room. The curtains were drawn, casting the room in an unnatural twilight despite the sunny day outside. My mom had that pinched look she got when she was trying to hide her annoyance, lips pressed together, nostrils slightly flared. My dad was holding a piece of paper, his expression unreadable. We need to talk about this, he said, holding up what I now realized was a printout of my browser history. My blood ran cold. I'd cleared it. I was sure I had, but apparently not thoroughly enough. My father's IT expertise had come back to haunt me. You accessed my email last night, he continued, his voice dangerously calm. That's a serious invasion of privacy, Elizabeth. My mom shook her head, her perfectly highlighted hair swinging with the movement. We're very disappointed. First the plagiarism, now this. Her voice cracked with what sounded like genuine emotion. She'd always been good at crying on cue, a skill I'd witnessed countless times at parent-teacher conferences when she needed to appear concerned about my academic progress. I wanted to scream. They were turning it around on me, making me the villain in their story, just like they always did. It was their favorite tactic. Darvo, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. I'd learned about it in psychology class, never realizing how perfectly it described my parents' behavior. I know what you did, I said, looking directly at my dad. I heard the recording. You lied to Mrs. Peterson about my essay. The USB drive felt heavy in my pocket, my one piece of leverage. For a split second, something flashed across his face. Guilt, maybe, or surprise that I'd found the evidence. But he recovered quickly, his features smoothing into that concerned parent mask he wore so well. I told her the truth, he said firmly. And the fact that you broke into my email only proves that you're not taking responsibility for your actions. My mom reached for my hand, her manicured fingers cold against my skin. Honey, we're worried about you. This behavior isn't like you. The lying, the sneaking around. It's like we don't even know who you are anymore. Her eyes glistened with tears that never quite fell. I pulled away from her. You have no idea what I'm like. You never have. My voice was quiet but steady. You've been so busy maintaining your perfect marriage image that you never bothered to actually know your daughter. That night, they took away my phone and laptop until I could be trusted again. They were cutting me off, making it harder for me to fight back. But they'd forgotten about the USB drive in my pocket, the one with the recording that could expose their lies. I slipped it into a small tear in my mattress for safekeeping, a hiding spot I'd used for years for things I didn't want them to find. The next morning, I borrowed Quinn's phone to call Mr. Taylor. The hallway was crowded with students, forcing me to press against the lockers and cover my free ear to hear him. I explained what had happened, that I had proof now, but my parents had taken my devices. Bring the recording to school, he said, his voice crackling through the phone. I'll make sure Mrs. Peterson listens to it. This has gone far enough. I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. Someone was on my side. Someone believed me. But when I got to school, there was a substitute teacher in Mr. Taylor's classroom, a bored-looking woman who barely glanced up from her phone as students filed in. According to the office, he'd called in sick. I tried texting him from Quinn's phone but got no response. It felt like everyone who might help me was suddenly unavailable. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. During lunch, Quinn and I sat at our usual table in the far corner of the cafeteria, away from the popular kids and their judging eyes. The smell of overcooked tater tots and mysterious meat product hung in the air. Something weird is going on, I said, pushing my untouched food around my tray. It's like my parents are always one step ahead. First Mr. Taylor disappears, then Mrs. Peterson is suddenly unavailable. Quinn nodded, taking a bite of her sandwich. Your dad knows people in this town. He's on like every community board. He could be pulling strings. The thought made my stomach churn. How far would they go to maintain their perfect image, to punish me for daring to speak the truth? The walls felt like they were closing in around me. After school, I went straight to Mrs. Peterson's office, determined to make her listen to the recording. But when I arrived, she wasn't alone. My parents were there, sitting across from her desk with concerned expressions. My mom's eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. My dad had his arm protectively around her shoulders. "Elizabeth," my mom said, her voice syrupy sweet, "we were just discussing your situation." Mrs. Peterson gave me a tight smile, her hands folded neatly on her desk. "Your parents are very concerned about you, Elizabeth. They've shared some things that frankly have me concerned as well." I clutched the USB drive in my pocket, my lifeline to the truth. "What things?" My dad cleared his throat, the sound unnervingly loud in the small office. "We told Mrs. Peterson about how you've been struggling lately. The lying, the breaking into accounts. We're worried this is more than just typical teenage rebellion." They were painting me as unstable, as someone whose word couldn't be trusted. I looked at Mrs. Peterson, trying to gauge if she believed them. Her expression was professionally neutral, but there was a hint of pity in her eyes that made my blood boil. "I have proof," I said, pulling out the USB drive. A recording of my dad admitting he lied about helping me with my essay. Mrs. Peterson took the drive hesitantly, holding it between two fingers as if it might bite. "I'll listen to this, but Elizabeth, your parents have suggested you might benefit from some time with our school counselor to work through these issues." They were trying to discredit me before anyone even heard the recording, make it seem like anything I said or did was just the product of a troubled mind. It was clever, in a twisted way. My father had always been good at chess, thinking several moves ahead. This was just another game to him, with my future as the prize. I left the office feeling defeated. Even with proof, would anyone believe me over my perfect, respected parents? The hallways were empty now, my footsteps echoing against the lockers. I felt more alone than ever. That evening, my parents acted like nothing had happened. They made dinner together, laughing and touching each other constantly as they moved around the kitchen. My mom chopped vegetables while my dad stirred something on the stove that smelled like garlic and herbs. I sat at the table, watching them perform their usual routine, wondering how I never noticed before how rehearsed it all seemed. "We're thinking of going away this weekend," my mom said casually, sliding a glass of water toward me. "Just a quick trip to the lake house. You're welcome to join us, of course." The lake house was 3 hours away, completely isolated with spotty cell service at best. If I went there, I'd be cut off from Quinn, from Mr. Taylor, from anyone who might help me. The perfect place to further isolate me. "I'll pass," I said, not touching the water. My dad frowned, turning from the stove. "It might be good for us to spend some time together as a family, reset things." His tone suggested this wasn't really a request. "There's nothing to reset," I replied. "You lied to destroy my future because I embarrassed you. That's not something a weekend at the lake can fix." My mom sighed dramatically, exchanging a meaningful look with my dad. "See, Robert, this is exactly what I was talking about. The paranoia, the accusations. I'm really worried about her. They were gaslighting me, trying to make me doubt my own reality. But I knew what I'd heard on that recording. I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to let them rewrite it." Later that night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Mr. Taylor. "Sorry I wasn't at school today. Your parents called the principal, said you were making false accusations against them because of the Harvard rejection. They're trying to get ahead of the story. Be careful." So that was their game. They were systematically cutting off all my potential allies, making sure no one would believe me. I was running out of options, the walls of their manipulation closing in around me. The next day, Mrs. Peterson called me into her office. She looked uncomfortable as I sat down across from her, fidgeting with a pen on her desk. The USB drive sat between us, like a small grenade waiting to explode. "I listened to the recording," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "And I've spoken with your parents again." My heart raced, hope and dread battling in my chest. "Then you know my dad lied." She hesitated, her fingers tapping an irregular rhythm on her desk. "Your father has explained that the recording is out of context, that he was actually referring to a different essay, one from your junior year that he helped you with significantly." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "That's not true. You can hear him specifically mention my Harvard essay about resilience." My voice rose with each word, desperation creeping in. "Elizabeth," she said gently, using the tone adults reserve for children they think are being irrational, "your parents are very concerned about how you're handling this rejection. They've shown me some concerning texts you've sent them, accusing them of sabotage, of not loving you." Texts? I hadn't texted them anything like that. They must have fabricated messages to show her. My father worked in IT. Creating fake text screenshots would be child's play for him. "They're lying," I said, my voice shaking. "They've always been like this. They care more about their perfect marriage than they do about me. They always have." Mrs. Peterson's expression softened into pity, the worst possible reaction. "I think you might benefit from talking to someone professional about these feelings. It's normal to be upset about college rejections, but this level of paranoia isn't healthy." I left her office in a daze, the fluorescent lights of the hallway suddenly too bright, too harsh. They were winning. My own parents were systematically destroying my credibility, making me look unstable and vindictive, and people were believing them. When I got home, my parents were sitting in the living room waiting for me. My mom was crying, actual tears streaming down her face, smearing her usually perfect mascara. My dad had his arm around her, comforting her with gentle circles on her back. "Elizabeth," he said, his voice stern but with an undercurrent of what sounded like genuine concern. "This has gone far enough. We've been patient, but your behavior is hurting this family." My mom wiped her eyes with a tissue, her hand trembling slightly. "We love you so much, sweetie. We just want to help you through this difficult time." Their performance was flawless. If I hadn't heard that recording myself, I might have actually believed them. Might have started to think that maybe I was the problem. That's how good they were at this, making you question your own sanity, your own memories. "We've made an appointment for you to see Dr. Winters tomorrow," my dad continued. "He's an excellent therapist who specializes in adolescent issues." They were trying to get me labeled as mentally unstable. Once that happened, no one would believe anything I said. My word against theirs would would be no contest. Game over. I needed to act fast. I still had the USB drive with the recording, but I needed more. Something they couldn't explain away or twist around, and I needed allies who wouldn't be so easily manipulated by my parents' act. That night, I texted Quinn from my laptop since my parents had forgotten to take that away. Need your help. Can you pick me up early tomorrow before school and bring your laptop? The next morning, Quinn was waiting down the street in her hit-up Honda, engine idling quietly in the early morning fog. I climbed in, clutching my backpack with the USB drive safely inside. What's the plan? She asked as we drove to the local coffee shop that had free Wi-Fi. The smell of her car's peppermint air freshener was oddly calming. We're going to email the recording to everyone, I said, determination hardening my resolve. The principal, all my teachers, Harvard's admissions office, everyone who needs to hear the truth. Quinn raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing at her lips. Nuclear option. I like it. We set up at a corner table and I plugged the USB drive into her laptop. But when I tried to open the audio file, an error message appeared. File corrupted. No, I whispered, trying again. Same result. This can't be happening. Panic rose in my throat, threatening to choke me. Quinn tried a few recovery programs she had, but nothing worked. The file was completely unreadable. My evidence had vanished as if it had never existed. Did you make a backup? She asked, her voice gentle. I shook my head, fighting back tears. I didn't have time. My parents took my devices right after I downloaded it. My one piece of hard evidence was gone, and I had a sinking feeling it wasn't an accident. My dad must have found my hiding place and tampered with the drive. With his IT background, he would know exactly how to corrupt a file to make it unreadable. What now? Quinn asked, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I took a deep breath, pushing down the despair that threatened to overwhelm me. We need a new plan. Something they won't see coming. I stared at Quinn's laptop, my mind racing. The corrupted file felt like the universe's final screw you in this whole mess, but I wasn't ready to give up. Not after everything. Wait, I said suddenly, grabbing Quinn's arm. My dad records all his calls. There might be more. What if he called Harvard directly too? Quinn's eyes widened. That would be the smoking gun. But how do we get access to his account again? I thought about it for a minute, drumming my fingers on the table. He changed his email password. But what about his phone provider account? He might have call logs there that could prove he contacted Harvard. We spent the next hour huddled over Quinn's laptop, trying different password combinations on my dad's phone carrier website. Nothing worked. I was about to give up when I remembered something. Try my mom's birthday backward plus love you, I said. My dad was nothing if not predictable with his passwords when it came to my mom. The account loaded, and we both gasped. We're in, Quinn whispered, like someone might overhear us in the nearly empty coffee shop. We found his call history and scrolled through. Sure enough, there was a call to a Massachusetts area code the day after graduation, the same day he'd called my guidance counselor. The call lasted almost 8 minutes. That has to be Harvard, I said, my heart pounding. But we don't have the recording. Quinn was already typing furiously. No, but we have the call log. It proves he contacted them directly. Combined with the timing of your rejection, it's pretty damning. She took screenshots of everything, emailing them to herself and me. At least we had something, even if it wasn't as definitive as the recording. We need more, I said, thinking out loud. Something they can't dismiss as circumstantial. That's when I remembered my dad's work laptop. He sometimes brought it home, and unlike his personal accounts, his work stuff was protected by company security protocols. He couldn't just change those passwords on a whim. His work laptop, I said. He might have the recordings backed up there too. Quinn looked at her watch. We've got about 20 minutes before first period. Let's go back to your house and check. My parents would both be at work by now. Dad always left by 7:30, and Mom had yoga on Thursday mornings. The house would be empty. When we got there, I used my key to let us in. The house was silent, that eerie kind of quiet that feels like it's watching you. We went straight to my dad's home office. His work laptop wasn't on his desk. I checked the drawers, the shelves, even under the desk. Nothing. He must have taken it with him, I said, disappointment washing over me. Quinn was looking around the room. What about external hard drives? Someone who records everything probably keeps backups. That was a good point. I started searching more thoroughly, checking the bookshelf, the filing cabinet, everywhere I could think of. Finally, in the bottom drawer of his desk, hidden under a stack of old tax returns, I found a small black external hard drive. Bingo, I whispered, holding it up. We plugged it into Quinn's laptop and waited for it to load. It asked for a password. Damn it, I muttered. I tried all the usual combinations, but nothing worked. Quinn was looking at the time. We need to go or we'll be late. Bring the hard drive with you. Maybe we can figure out the password later. I slipped the hard drive into my backpack, and we headed to school. All day, I couldn't focus on anything. My mind kept circling back to that hard drive and what might be on it. The key to exposing my parents' lies could be right there, locked behind a password I couldn't crack. During lunch, Quinn and I sat in the library, trying different password combinations on the hard drive. Nothing worked. What about your birthday? Quinn suggested. Maybe it's not all about your mom. I doubted it, but I tried anyway. To my complete shock, it worked. The hard drive opened, revealing folders neatly organized by date. He used my birthday, I said, feeling a weird mix of surprise and something like hope. Maybe somewhere deep down, he did care about me after all. Or maybe it was just a password he knew I'd never guess because it seemed too obvious. We found a folder labeled call recordings and started going through it. There were hundreds of files, all labeled with dates and phone numbers. We found the call to my guidance counselor first, the one I'd already heard. Then we kept searching until we found one from the same day to a number with a Massachusetts area code. With shaking hands, I clicked on it. My dad's voice filled our headphones. Hello, this is Robert Miller. I need to speak with someone in the admissions department regarding my daughter, Elizabeth Miller. There was a pause, then a woman's voice. This is Andrea from admissions. How can I help you? I'm calling about my daughter's application, my dad continued. She was recently accepted, but I've discovered something concerning. Her personal essay, the one about resilience and overcoming challenges, was largely written by me. My stomach twisted as I listened to him spin the same lies he'd told my guidance counselor. I helped her too much, he continued, his voice dripping with fake regret. Actually, I wrote most of it. After seeing her behavior at graduation yesterday, I realized I've been enabling her. She needs to learn there are consequences. The admissions officer sounded shocked. Mr. Miller, that's a very serious admission. Plagiarism is grounds for immediate rejection. I know, my dad replied, and that's why I'm calling. It's not right for her to take a spot from someone who earned it honestly. My wife and I are heartbroken, but we believe in integrity. I felt sick listening to him. The calculated way he destroyed my future while positioning himself as the honest, upstanding parent was chilling. We'll need to review this information and contact your daughter's school, the woman said. I understand. I've already spoken with her guidance counselor. They're handling it on their end as well. The call ended, and Quinn and I sat in stunned silence for a moment. We've got him, Quinn finally whispered. This is it, Elizabeth. Actual proof. This time we were smarter. We made multiple copies of the recording, sending it to both our emails, saving it on Quinn's laptop, and even uploading it to a private cloud storage account Quinn created just for this purpose. Now what? Quinn asked. Who do we take this to? I thought about it. Mrs. Peterson had already shown she was inclined to believe my parents. The principal might be the same. We needed someone with real authority who wouldn't be swayed by my parents' reputation in town. The superintendent, I decided, and Harvard directly. We bypass everyone who might be influenced by my parents. After school, Quinn drove me to the district office. I was nervous but determined, clutching a USB drive with the recordings and call logs. The superintendent's secretary looked surprised when we asked to see him, but after I explained it was about academic fraud at the elevated school, she reluctantly buzzed us in. Dr. Williams was an imposing man with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. He listened without interrupting as I explained everything: my parents' emotional neglect, my graduation speech, and my dad's vindictive response. When I played the recordings, his expression grew increasingly grave. These are serious allegations, Miss Miller, he said when I finished. If what you're saying is true, this represents a significant breach of academic ethics. It is true, I said firmly. Every word. My dad lied to punish me for embarrassing him, and now he and my mom are trying to make me look unstable so no one will believe me. Dr. Williams nodded slowly. I'll need to investigate this thoroughly. In the meantime, I suggest you stay with a friend or relative if you don't feel safe at home. It wasn't exactly the immediate vindication I'd hoped for, but it was something. Someone in authority was finally taking me seriously. Quinn's parents let me stay with them that night. Her mom made up the guest room with fresh sheets and told me I could stay as long as I needed. It was strange being in a house where parents actually noticed their kid, where they asked about her day and remembered her favorite foods. I almost cried when Quinn's mom hugged me goodnight, a casual gesture for her, but so foreign to me it felt like a revelation. The next morning, my phone exploded with texts from my parents, demanding to know where I was. I didn't respond. Let them worry for once. At school, I was called to the principal's office. Dr. Williams was there, along with Mrs. Peterson and the principal. My stomach dropped when I saw my parents sitting there too, looking appropriately concerned and slightly betrayed. Elizabeth, the principal said, please sit down. I sat as far from my parents as possible. My mom was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, while my dad had his arm around her shoulders, the perfect supportive husband comforting his distraught wife. It made me want to scream. We've been reviewing the evidence you provided, Dr. Williams said, his tone neutral, and we've spoken with Harvard's admissions office directly. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was it, the moment of truth. Based on our investigation, it appears there has been a significant misrepresentation regarding your college essay, he continued. Harvard has confirmed they received a call from your father claiming he wrote your essay. My dad started to speak, but Dr. Williams held up a hand to stop him. However, they also spoke with your English teacher, Mr. Taylor, who provided samples of your writing from throughout elevated school. The stylistic consistency between those samples and your college essay is unmistakable. Hope bloomed in my chest. Mr. Taylor had come through for me after all. Furthermore, Dr. Williams continued, the timing of your father's calls, immediately following your graduation speech, suggests a retaliatory motive rather than a genuine ethical concern. My mom was crying for real now, not the delicate photogenic tears she usually produced, but ugly mascara-smearing sobs. My dad's face had gone completely white. In light of this evidence, we've recommended that Harvard reconsider your application on its original merits, the principal said. They've agreed to do so. Relief washed over me so intensely I felt lightheaded. They believed me. After all this time, someone finally believed me over my parents. As for you, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, Dr. Williams said, turning to my parents, what you've done constitutes educational sabotage. The district takes this extremely seriously. We'll be referring this matter to family services for further investigation. My dad finally found his voice. This is ridiculous. We were only trying to teach her about integrity, about consequences. No, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. You were punishing me for telling the truth, for not playing along with your perfect family fantasy. My mom looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. We love you, Elizabeth. Everything we've done has been because we love you. You love each other, I corrected her. I was just there, an accessory to your perfect life, until I wasn't perfect anymore. The meeting ended with arrangements for me to continue staying with Quinn's family, while family services conducted their investigation. As we left the office, Mr. Taylor was waiting in the hallway. He gave me a small nod, a silent confirmation that he'd been in my corner all along. 2 weeks later, I got an email from Harvard. They'd reviewed my application again and were offering me admission for the fall semester. I cried when I read it, sitting on Quinn's bed with her arm around my shoulders. The investigation into my parents was still ongoing, but I'd already decided I wouldn't be moving back home regardless of the outcome. Quinn's parents had offered to let me stay with them until college started. They'd even helped me apply for financial aid and scholarships since I couldn't count on my parents' support anymore. My parents tried to contact me several times, leaving voicemails that ranged from apologetic to defensive. I wasn't ready to talk to them yet. Maybe someday, but not now. Right now, I needed to focus on my future, the one I'd earned, the one they'd tried to take away. The last day of school, I cleaned out my locker and found an old photo tucked into a textbook. It showed my parents and me at some school function years ago. They were looking looking at each other with those lovesick expressions, while I stood slightly apart, smiling hopefully at the camera. I'd spent so many years trying to be seen by them, trying to earn a place in their perfect little world. I put the photo back in the textbook and left it in the locker. I didn't need it anymore. I was finally free to build my own life, one where I wouldn't be anyone's afterthought. As I walked out of the school for the last time, Quinn waiting for me in the parking lot, I felt lighter than I had in years. My parents might have the kind of love that makes other people jealous, but I had something better now, a future that was entirely my own.